Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's SONIM S4 webinar. My name is Krista Northup. I'm the Director of Education here at SONIM S4 in North America. We are really pleased to be kicking off a new series today titled The New Normal, Practitioners' Insights on International Student Recruitment in Key Regions. And we're starting with India. Please keep your eyes out for our release of new webinars coming up in the series. In 2 weeks' time, the week of June 22nd, we'll be hosting a webinar on China. As for today, I'm so pleased to have my two colleagues here. I'll briefly introduce them and then we'll dive right in. Just please note that today's webinar is being recorded. We will send around the recording as well as the slides to all of those who have registered. So first, I'd like to introduce Lakshmi Iyer. Lakshmi is our Executive Director and Head of Education. Lakshmi has been with SONIM S4 for 9 years now, having transformed the education division in that time. Prior to SONIM S4, Lakshmi spent several years working at a very well-established education agency in India. And Lakshmi, as probably many of you have heard, is a prolific speaker. She actually just presented yesterday at the eConnect NAFSA conference. So Lakshmi, hello, welcome, and thank you so much for your time this evening, India time.
Thanks for having me, Krista. I'm really looking forward to the session today.
And next we have Delia Hennigan. Delia is the Director of Education India and has responsibility for all in-market client delivery for our clients. Delia provides strategic advice and oversight to the robust mix of education institutions that we work with. Delia has been with SONIM S4 for just about 3 years, bringing to the team a long list of academic credentials, including her experience as Dean and Director International at a leading UK university, as well as PVCI at an American university in London. Hello, Delia.
Hi, Krista. It's lovely to be here this afternoon.
Yes.
We're all in different time zones.
That's right. That's right. And welcome again to all of those joining us. We will present for about 40 minutes and then at the end take your questions. If you have questions as we go, feel free to go ahead and type them into the chat box and I will read through the questions at the end and Lakshmi and Delia will answer those questions. Okay, so I'm very pleased to turn it over now to Lakshmi and Delia.
Thank you, Krista. So between Delia and I, we will take about 35 to 40 minutes to walk you through about 15 slides, generally kind of setting the scene as to what we are observing in India at this point in time. I'm going to share my screen just now. So the topics that we are going to cover as we go through this presentation, one is how India is faring at this point in time on the COVID-19 front. We launched a sentiment survey of our team. As you know, we serve over 70 higher education clients from 8 different countries. And our colleagues and all of us in the team, we are constantly in touch with a range of stakeholders in the market. So we wanted to bring back those findings and also those observations for the benefit of our client pool. Simultaneously, with that survey, we have also been running an agent sentiment survey. Many of our clients work with a whole array of agents across India, and we felt that it would validate whatever that we are observing as we engage with the stakeholders to have this piece of analysis sat alongside that. I will then hand off to Delia to talk about how the digital recruitment landscape is evolving, how the changing roles of agents and in-market representatives, new partnership models that are emerging as the pandemic is playing out across the world. And institutions, both onshore and offshore, are looking at helping their students navigate this new normal. And we will have about 15 to 20 minutes for questions at the end of it. So India, as you know, is a land of 1.3 billion. We are the second most populous country in the world. I have taken the liberty of taking a piece of intelligence that my husband, who works for India Today magazine, had developed, and I thought this would be very useful for our entire audience and client pool, just to set the context on the size of the challenge that India faces. So we are 29 states and 6 union territories, and here are some examples of the size of the population within these states and what they equate to. So just as an example, one of the states very severely affected by COVID-19, which is Rajasthan, has got a population the size of the United Kingdom. If you were to look at a state like Tamil Nadu, which is another highly affected state, it has a population the size of Iran. Maharashtra, which has got the hotspot, Mumbai, where the cases have been really escalating, has got a population the size of Japan. So this is the size of the problem that we currently have. Having said that, as on today, the number of cases that we have are about 287,000 plus. And for the first time since yesterday, we have got a situation where the recovery cases have kind of outstripped the cases that are still under treatment. We have lost a little over 8,100 individuals to the disease. And as you know, the states have kind of gone through a phase of getting infected at different stages. And due to the varying extent of community spread in some states, in many states we haven't had community spread, but there are a couple of states where we have started seeing that. We think that our states are going to recover at very different rates, and it won't be the entire country opening up at the same time. So that is going to significantly impact the ability of many of us to be able to travel domestically, because as in the United States and elsewhere, our state governments have a lot of power. There is a central government, but the government, as on June 1st, started lifting some of the lockdown regulations. And as on June 8th, most of the lockdown restrictions have been lifted. We have got malls and other places opening up, and we have also seen a shooting up of our infection rates. So the states have some states have shut their borders, some have opened. They are open one day, they are shut another day. So there is a bit of confusion also on the ground as we are grappling with the march of the disease in country. So as I alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, we started we decided as we went into the lockdown on March 24th, we decided that we will survey ourselves as a team, because all of us at any point in time are engaging with a variety of stakeholders in market. Whether it be students, parents, those of us who support agency networks, school counselors, independent counselors, other educational institutions, and so on. So we wanted to kind of assess the mood of the market as we were speaking to these various stakeholders who are very, very important in terms of the internationalization aspect. And of course, the timing was very critical, because this is the time when Indian students go through the examinations, and some of them enter into their summer break and are weighing up their choices as to which country they would go to, and of course, which institutions they would target. So the respondent profile is there on the right side. On the left side, you would see the word cloud. So every week we are also kind of monitoring the words that are coming into the the survey findings. So queries, COVID-19, a lot of us are spending, we are all zoomed out. A lot of us are spending time on Zoom, trying to counsel students, the impact, whether it is tuition fees, timings, when they can leave the country, if at all, this year, and so on and so forth. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the word cloud, and on the right-hand side, you can obviously see the respondent profile. So if I were to kind of walk you through this, so we look at every week, we look at what we see as the student outlook, what we are hearing back from the agents. Then we look at a bunch of education stakeholders, including institutions and counselors and independent counselors and so on. And then we arrive at an overall sentiment of the market. And for the last 4-5 weeks, the consistent outcome of this is that uncertainty is the dominant sentiment. Last week, for example, it was in the region of 60%. The week prior to that, it was 62%, so a 2% drop. But I would not kind of say that that is a significant drop. People are kind of trying to figure out how they are going to navigate this situation, and that is reflective in all of the conversations that we are having. And we also started looking at how we are spending time in nurturing the market. So colleagues, as we moved into the lockdown situation, obviously there was a lot of confusion. Didn't know whether we would be able to kind of serve our constituencies, whether the agents were geared up to even speak to us, whether staff members in the agency networks had resources at hand, whether students would come on Zoom calls and so on and so forth. And what we have seen is that over a period of time, a pattern has emerged, which is that colleagues are now spending a lot of time attending online fairs. And those online fairs have not just been organized by just agency networks. They have been organized by accommodation providers. They have been organized by country promotion bodies. They have been organized by trade organizations and so on, and also counseling organizations. So, colleagues have looked at various different formats as well. They are not just kind of focused on channels that they were used to before we went into the lockdown. They are experimenting with newer channels, newer portals that have emerged that they probably would not have considered in the past. So, and the time is being spent on counseling, on conversion, protection of the pipeline, engaging with a variety of stakeholders. Some bit of time is going in training the agents, and a lot of time is being spent in planning and also researching what the next option looks like. And almost everyone is busy doing multiple events every week, and almost all agents now have kind of those who work with agents have seen that agents have shifted into an online format. And if you and the kind of stakeholders that they have gone ahead and engaged with are obviously students. Parents have suddenly become very much a part of the conversation because most of the kids are sat at home. They are having a one-on-one session on Zoom, and suddenly the parent will pop up wanting to kind of understand who the child is interacting with, what kind of conversation, what does the future look like, what is the COVID preparedness of the campus, and so on and so forth. And colleagues who are tasked with only looking at the undergrad population have had to really think out of the box because schools are shut. Many school counselors have kind of, transitioned into their vacation time in some cases. Then how do you kind of reach out to these students? So we are now seeing a crop of edtech companies that have really worked hard at building out a pipeline, them becoming the channel route to market for our colleagues. So they are spending time identifying these channels. Many of those channels are identified by people like me and Delia, because we have a collective bargaining power that we can take to the market, because we represent so many institutions. So on behalf of our colleagues, we identify some of these channels and bring them into the organization, so that we have, for example, as on 8th of June, we have organized a series of fairs for 30 of our institutions to participate in promoting both their undergrad and postgrad program mix, and also contribute blogs, reach out to a group of 500 students, and so on and so forth. So these are all ongoing activities. We have only become busier. It hasn't kind of, it's a relentless pace that we have set ourselves up for. And the top queries that we are seeing from students, the graph is self-explanatory, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the last one in this bar chart, which is the deferral and the refund related requests. Week on week, we have seen these the percentage numbers just increasing, and as on last week, it has almost hit 90%. So our team members are spending a lot of time fielding these kinds of queries from students, many of whom haven't yet kind of pivoted away from wanting to study abroad, but are looking at deferring that offer letter, so that they, once the landscape becomes a lot less uncertain, they can kind of, make their moves. I will now hand over to Delia, so that she can talk to you about what we are seeing in the agency landscape, as it is a very important kind of dipstick on the mood of the nation, so to speak.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Yes, and as Lakshmi said, we know that not everybody works with agents, but they are an extremely important channel in India, and somewhere between 70 and 80% of students do consult agents, and many of those actually progress to their study abroad through that channel. We are agent agnostic, so we are not in any way connected, but we do obviously work with them, we know them. And so as soon as we went into lockdown, we wanted to really understand what was happening in that space, because it's a very important space for India. Even if you don't work with them, they give you a real feel for what's happening, what people are thinking. So this agent sentiment analysis was a very important tool for us. We're taking this every fortnight, so there are 3 sessions there that you'll be able to look at and draw information out from. And again, it very much mirrors what Lakshmi was just going through, looking at the sentiment analysis from our staff and the people that they're engaging with, and the students that they're engaging with. So it's a good sense check that this really is how the mood is at the moment. So first of all, one of the key things that we're interested in, because it's very important to our clients and to other universities recruiting in India, is the readiness of students to take their course online. Of course, universities moved mountains in the past few months to get courses online, to allow students who were already in their courses to complete their semester and to be able to sort of complete what they needed to do. And also, because we don't know where the pandemic is going to go, we know that most universities around the world are looking at some form of blended learning, online delivery, to allow them to start the autumn, the fall semester. So it's a very important topic for all of us. It's also very important within India. And I was on a webinar on Tuesday with a number of Indian universities where we were talking about how they are dealing with moving online and what that will look like for the students in India. So what we can see from this is that students are still very uncertain. and that uncertainty has grown. And you're now looking at somewhere just over 70% of students in this final section are uncertain about whether to take part of their course online. I think what we're picking up anecdotally is students are reluctant to do it, and where there's an option to defer, then that would be their preferred option. And it does differ between undergraduate and post and graduate level. So bachelor students are more inclined to think it might be an option because of where they are in their life, in their study cycle. They're also thinking that I'm going to be doing this for 4 years, so maybe doing 1 semester or even a whole year is not so much. But graduate students are thinking of it from a very different situation. They're possibly already in work. They're thinking, I don't really want to give up work to do online learning. I was wanting to invest in face-to-face, in that whole international experience. So lots of uncertainty there, lots of concern about whether I'll be able to cope online. I've not been used to studying online. Do I have the infrastructure? All sorts of things like that. But, and critical to that, a critical part of that uncertainty is that they are certainly very concerned about being charged the same fee for an online version as for the face-to-face campus experience. And as you can see, the dominant response there is no. They are not thinking that it's appropriate to charge the same fee. They're not willing to pay the same fee. And that's very consistent and has been consistent anecdotal feedback we've had for some time. So those two things I think are connected and are very important for future planning for universities thinking about how they might manage moving forward in the fall and in the winter. Lakshmi, could you, thank you. The topmost student queries from the sentiment analysis, as you can see, they have changed and shifted, and the key ones there are at the top, and again, they're picking up on that point we were just looking at. The 72%, whether the program will have some online component, deferrals and refund requests are increasing a lot. One of the things that's very important is causing a lot of stress and uncertainty is, how will my university, I might really want to continue with my university choice, but I haven't got my results. This is particularly important. You know, lots of standard 12 students have not been able to complete. Students who are coming out of universities to look for graduate programs have maybe not yet been able to take their final exams. So how you respond to that, how you support the students who have that uncertainty is very important. It's obviously something that is key for them there. And then another area is visa-related queries. The visa offices have been shut while India has been in lockdown. Lots of concerns about whether I will, you know, if my university is open and does allow me to come, will I get my visa? How long will it take? Will I get there in time? So all things we know that are not necessarily within your control, but really important that you have some view of what people are feeling around that so that you can respond and where necessary, discuss that with you know, sort of industry and sector bodies. Another aspect of our agent survey that we think is extremely interesting is, what do they need? So what does the market need from you? Not just agents, but anyone that you work with. And one of the key things here is quick and regular updates. They need to have those communication channels, you know, working and working effectively. So when you are sure of what you're going to do, or even if you're not sure, they need you to communicate. We're thinking about this. We might be able to tell you on such and such a date, or this is the answer. We have been able to respond. So very, very important that there is regular communication, and even if you've not got a decision to share, you know, keep telling them something that things are happening. So that's very important. Clarity on visa requirements, that mostly is around what will happen if there is a proportion of the course being delivered online. So students are very concerned to know from the immigration authorities, if I am going to do a semester online, will that count? Will that be okay? Or if I start online and I don't get my visa, what will happen? So they're all the sort of concerns that they have around that. Another area of interest is basically keeping in touch and building staff knowledge and training as to what the university is going to offer, and making sure that the people who are working for you on the ground know what they should be saying, know what your messaging is. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thanks. And here we have just again another infographic that shows you the way some of the sentiments have shifted, and you can see what is the important topic for the last few weeks. So we've seen a change. So you will see that 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, there was a lot of interest about this business of delay at the intake. When are you going to start? Is it going to be an October start as opposed to an August start? That was the main area of concern. Now, this last one, the really important area that people are thinking about is, are there going to be scholarships? Are the scholarships going to be increasing? And that's really not just about scholarship, but about bursaries and discounts around this whole idea of, if something's going to be online, I don't expect to pay the same price for it because I'm not getting the same experience. So that whole issue of scholarships is not just around an academic scholarship, but some form of reflection of the fact that the fee should in some way reflect what the students are going to be getting. And in India, that's very important because it's not been a normal practice for online to be at the same rate as a face-to-face. So there is a whole issue around value for money there that students feel quite strongly about. Lakshmi? One of the key takeaways that we wanted to share with you was the increasing importance of digital marketing and digital recruitment in the landscape. And as Lakshmi said, virtual fairs, they were quite slow to start off with initially. There was only 1 or 2 providers that got into that space virtually immediately. But now what we're seeing is more and more organizations stepping into that space. You know, whether it's government bodies who are holding their own fairs, like, for example, Education New Zealand had one a few weeks ago. Education Ireland is holding webinars on a regular basis. What's interesting is the accommodation providers, those organizations that are ancillary to the universities and to the normal recruitment, are really concerned about how this will impact their business. So they're moving into this space to try and make sure that universities are able to access leads, are able to talk to students. And we are hearing that there are still new leads coming through in some of these. So it's not all doom and gloom. There is definitely an underlying feeling that, yes, I still want to study abroad. I still want to think about it. I just might not do it this year if I'm going to be maybe studying online or doing something, or I'm not going to get a visa. But definitely there is that strong underlying interest. And these are all the new platforms that students are using and that our staff are using: webinars, one-to-one calls, Instagram. People are moving into TikTok. So lots and lots of different platforms that are available to generate leads, to keep those leads warm, to look after your pipeline, and to engage with your audience and turn them into a community, because that's where you will start to be able to move them along. Lakshmi, could you? And then the other thing I think that is very important where we are now is academic institutions really do need to think about what links they've got on the ground and how they use them. Now here we're talking about the fact that in-country representation is a very important tool at this time, as are other local partners, and they could be institutional partners, or they could be school links or agents, as we've talked about. Many universities do use them, not everybody. And the reason for that is the borders are closed, or people are reluctant to travel internationally. So you're not going to be able to get your own staff over and into India easily in the very near future. So we're not sure when that's going to happen. I'm certainly aware of many of our partner institutions are not thinking of any international travel until into 2021. That's certainly not an unusual conversation for us to be having. I myself am currently stuck in Ireland. I mean, this is my home, but I also have my home in Delhi, and I'm stuck here at the moment, although I'm working on India time. And one of the fantastic things about technology is that I'm able to do that and feel extremely connected with my team and my work in India. So all of these reasons listed there are why you really can benefit from having close connections on the ground to allow you to continue to engage with that group of students who are still interested in study abroad. So very important that you get support and help to navigate what is a volatile and fast-moving environment, and it will also allow you to get real-time insights, because it's changing from day to day, as you know yourselves in your own countries, and also to amplify your brand, to get your message out there, because it's a very noisy, crowded, competitive environment as well. Lakshmi, would you? One of the ways that we are seeing, and it's very important, area to think about, is that one of the good things that will come out of this, and there will be lots of good things that will come out of this, is that India was already going through a change in its international higher education journey. It was already embracing lots of regulatory change that was going to open up opportunities that hadn't been there before. That is accelerating as we see the government respond to the pandemic. So, for example, previously it hadn't been possible for Indian universities to easily offer online courses. There were lots of restrictions about that. They've been opened up now. The government is recognizing there is a need for different approaches, and also other regulatory changes are coming into place. So new partnership models, working with institutions in India, where you can look at some sort of joint provision, maybe having study centers and things like that. These are all things that that can help and will maybe take us through the next 2 to 3 years, and then move us into a very different form of international partnership and engagement with India that hasn't been there before. Because one of the things that students are concerned about when they look at online is, I'm going to miss that whole experience. So if in some way you can replicate that with a partner in country, that might be beneficial. But of course, as I said, it's fast moving, it's volatile. At the moment, India is seeing a spike, and we're not going to necessarily be through the peak of that curve for a few weeks. And so is that really going to be viable for September or August, where we had been thinking that a few weeks ago? So very important to be talking to those partners, having your sort of ears on the ground. But this will be an important part of any medium-term strategy for working with India. And so one that I think we will be coming back to in future webinars. Thanks, Lakshmi. And just to continue on that theme, we all know that in many countries where we work, there have been established models for partnership and in-country delivery. The 1+3, the 2+2, all those different variations that have been so strong in China and other countries in the Far East. And they've not ever really got off the ground in India for a whole range of regulatory reasons. That is likely to change. And we've just got an example there of one of our clients and what they're doing in China. Australia and New Zealand are slightly ahead of Northern Hemisphere countries because this hit them earlier, and we all know that New Zealand is now moved to be COVID-free, although the borders are still shut, and they are going to be very, very careful about how they move into the next stage of response to this. But what you're seeing here is the University of Auckland using its partnerships in China to set up study centers. So those students that were trapped in China in January when the epidemic first took off there and couldn't get back to their studies are now going to be able to attend partner institutions that are open in China and continue their University of Auckland courses. So just an example of innovative thinking, ways of using your partnerships to ensure that your students can still gain that qualification that they want. So very, very important to think about those partnerships and to think about, if you haven't got those partnerships, how you can start to build them, how you can select them, because we all know that it's very, very important that that partnerships are there for the right reasons, and that there is a good match, because if those things are not there, then the partnership will not be successful. So it's not sort of any port in a storm. It's find the right partner, be clear about your strategy, make sure there's mutuality, and get advice, do your due diligence, have your plan there, and this is a possible way in which we will, over the next 2 to 3 years, be part of that change in the India internationalization journey. So I'll stop there now, and I think that Lakshmi and I would be happy to take any questions that that you might have. We hope that you found that useful.
Thank you both so much. So we'll give a few minutes for people to write in with questions or comments. And while we wait for that, I thought we could have a little bit of a discussion. I find it just, you know, it's all such a fast moving space. And even from our team meeting a week ago, things have changed so fast. So that was really very, very helpful. I was wondering if you could touch a little bit more on the Indian student perception of online education, and maybe share any examples or anecdotes or strategies that you're seeing institutions use to maybe start to change perceptions or get students thinking slightly differently about online.
I mean, Lakshmi, do you want me to start with that one?
Yes, yeah.
I think it's the situation that in India, there has always been, not just from students, but across the board, employers, etc., have never felt that online education was quite the same. There was a perception that it was not quite, you know, as good as, and it was tended to be something that people did after they'd got their first or second degree, and it was something that you did to upskill or to do short courses as a working professional. So it didn't really have a space in that sort of first degree or master's degree. So that's a situation that you had. Now, we all know that that's got to change, because India has such a massive need for higher education that cannot be met through mass face-to-face. It's simply not possible to get the number of universities they need. So this is actually a good impetus for India, although it's one that is going to be a challenge for all of us for the next few years. So there is a perception that it wasn't quite as good, and if it's not quite as good, why should I pay so much money for it? And also, part of the international education experience is actually going to study abroad, to actually go and live in another country and have a global experience, and you're not going to get that online. The other part of the problem as well is that you've got lots of anecdotal evidence, and we all know how important peer feedback is. And a lot of universities moved mountains, as we said, to get online in basically a 2-week period when this first hit, which was phenomenal. But also a lot of it is not, you know, a lot of it's fabulous, but there is some of it that is, you know, just your lecture notes and a video of someone giving a lecture, and it can sometimes be in the middle of the night for a student in China, or, you know, at early hours of the morning for a student in India. So there's lots of those, and their friends are saying, oh, it's not great, it's not really been good. And then there's been anxious things about, well, I'm a medical student, how can I do that? Or I'm an engineering student, what about my lab work? So all of those things. And some of our partner universities in other countries that we have been talking to are doing things like taster sessions. So the Australians, for example, through their national body, Austrade, have put together a whole program of modules from their universities, so students can sort of have taster sessions. So that's one whole country doing it. But other universities have also done things like we have one of our US partners who've offered a free course to anyone to sign up to experience their online platform, and what rich experience you can have, and how it can actually be a really excellent educational experience. Another has done something around things like try before you buy. So do 3 weeks, and you don't have to pay your fee until you've done 3 weeks and made sure it's right for you. Another one has got extended refund. So Max, would you add anything to that?
Yeah.
Have I left anything out?
So I think mid last year, so around July last year, India, the Ministry of Human Resource Development announced that a group of 5 or 6 institutions could start offering a selection of programs online, largely non-lab based courses. And that was the first step that the government took to start that process, the journey of being on the online learning space and loosening up the shackles that they had put around institutions. Having said that, whilst we entered into the pandemic phase, Government of India made an announcement saying that students can pursue 2 degrees at the same time. One can be through the face-to-face mode and the other completely online. So that was the second step that they took. The third step, again in the pandemic phase, and the third announcement was that as on May 30th, they said 100 universities in India that feature in the top 100 in the NIRF rankings can start offering a selection of programs online. But we are still waiting to hear what those programs are, which institutions are going to go down that path. But now, because of the situation that we are finding ourselves in, there is general acceptance that this is going to be the new norm. And today, again, there was an article in the newspapers about the Government of India saying that institutions will have to consider how they offer blended learning formats, where 40% of a program will be taught online and the rest face-to-face. So this is because usually our institutions open up in July. Now this year, that is going to go into August or September or even probably towards the end of the year. But the bureaucracy is not kind of minded to extend the academic year. So it will be compressed learning. So they just want to make sure that we are giving ourselves every chance possible to not let our students lose one academic year. So the only way forward for us would be to offer online modules and also blended learning modules and be more accepting of that. So in 8 weeks, what we could not kind of achieve in 75 years, we have achieved.
And I think that it will be a benefit in the long run, although students may well be quite sort of scared about that at the moment. The other thing that we've seen that's interesting that we're getting feedback on is students putting in place a plan B. And many of the Indian universities, particularly in the private space because a lot of the high level Indian universities that are in the public space are oversubscribed anyway and have cutoffs that are very, very high. But we're getting reports that, they're seeing 50% up to 100% increase in applications. And what that's about, it's about students who were planning to go overseas, who are concerned that they're not necessarily going to be able to get overseas, are having a plan B so that they can at least start something. Because one thing that Indian students don't like to do, and Lakshmi will correct me if I'm wrong, a gap year is not a really big sort of thing in India. It's not sort of the way it is in the UK or in the US or Canada or Australia. So Indian students tend to be on a very straight path, and they'll finish one and then move on to the next, and it's very much part of what they expect to do. So a lot of concern will be around, well, if I take a year out, if I defer, what am I going to do? So, and they won't be able to do the usual things that people do on gap years because of the pandemic. So they will not be able to get on and go around the world or do any of those things, or get a job that will help them save money or whatever. So I think that's a concern of parents. So I think you may see a shift where it becomes where they get to that last minute where they know that it's either online or nothing, that they may then become more comfortable with online, and how they make that choice will be interesting. But I think universities can think about that as a way in which they could maybe engage with a pipeline for next year. So if there are students who have to take this year out, who don't want to do online, then how can you help them have structure and get something out of that year and make sure it's a valuable learning experience. So there are still volunteering, there are virtual internships. We ourselves, as we all know, we were just talking about it, have this year just launched our virtual internship program where we've got 6 fabulous interns who are working with us over the summer. So I think universities could think about that as a way of engaging the pipeline and keeping your students warm. If they don't want to engage with starting their course online, then how can you put together some sort of engagement for them that allows them to structure and learn through a gap year that might have lots of different small experiences in it? And that might be something that's possible within some of your gen ed requirements or something like that, that they could get some credit for things that they've done in that way. So that's another thing that we're seeing coming out, another thing that is being discussed and debated as to what, if they don't do online, if they don't go overseas, if they can't get a place at an Indian university, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. A real concern for parents. The graduate students will probably stay employed. That's one of the reasons, again, thinking one of the big areas of concern for Indian students is, what will the economic impact be? What will the downturn possibly look like? How will it impact my employability? So graduate students who have got a job might be reluctant to give up a job. And there again, talking to them about how they can combine online learning with staying in work might be an attractive conversation to have with them. So they're just some practical examples of what we think might help you in your discussions with students who are interested in studying with you in some way in the next year or so.
Thank you very much. So we have a question here, and this one is probably something that institutions are really grappling with, and it's about assessing quality of learning and offerings. And specifically, this person's asking about ABET and SACS type assessments being carried out. I don't know if either of you want to comment on that. That one's pretty specific to quality control.
Sorry, Lakshmi.
After you, Delia, you first.
I think it depends in the context in which you're asking about quality. If you're asking about how you assess quality in terms of partnerships, and that's always a very important aspect of choosing your partners, is there a good quality of education there? Is this the sort of institution? And for India, you would look at lots of aspects. Your university will have its own due diligence measures, which will have to be gone through to assess that. But in India, you have got the rankings, the UGC recognition, you've got all sorts of information that is available to you to make that judgment. And they are quite broad ranging. You also, of course, would be talking to colleagues in the field who might be aware of that, taking soundings. And that's again where you come back to having those on the ground presence, those contacts, those connects at Education USA or in other places, to start to take those soundings that allow you to understand the quality of a potential partner. If you're talking about individual students and how you assess that, again, there are lots of different ways in which you can take that forward. I'm not familiar with those two specific acronyms, but I'll let Lakshmi jump in there.
So, I think for the first time, we are starting to see institutions grappling with this question of not having a ready-made examination based on which they can exclude a whole host of students and then bring in a few to the campus. And they have to really think out of the box, because as Delia mentioned when she was presenting, a lot of our students who are looking to enter into undergrad programs, they haven't managed to finish their examinations, and they will two of the central board examinations will happen between the rest of the exams will happen between July 1st and 15th of next month. And the college examinations, many of them haven't really happened. So in many states, they are talking of letting students just pass on the basis of assignments that they have submitted in the past, etc. That then leaves universities that take in undergrad cohorts and grad cohorts with the question of how they assess the quality. And most, for example, one very prestigious private university has recently made an announcement that they will be admitting students for their undergrad programs based on the 11th standard results, which is a very good indicator of how good a student is. And, you know, obviously at that time, people start proper examinations, and that will give them the confidence that the student can do their course. There is also a surge in interest in examinations that can be taken through remote proctoring and taken at home. So we have had a whole bunch of usual suspects like IELTS and TOEFL and, you know, GMAT and, you know, all of those now kind of moving into that space, which could also be an interesting one for Indian institutions to consider as a way to kind of measure quality, because obviously those students have not been able to go and take a publicly conducted examination.
Great, thank you. So we've done a little bit of work following the digital tax in India, and I'm aware that most of our university partners will have received some communications on that from us. But for those that we have not heard of this, Lakshmi and Delia, could you just give a brief overview of what's happening on the equalization levy, and for those that haven't heard, just to make them aware of that?
Yeah, I think Delia is the best person to take this because she has spent considerable amount of time talking to our tax colleagues on this, whilst I answer a question in the chat box.
Yes, I think the equalization levy, as Krista just said, was actually introduced as part of the February budget. So it was pre the pandemic, and it's part of a long-running tax on online, on e-commerce. And actually it was really laid out to deal with the Amazons and the Walmarts of this world coming into India. But the extension of it that came in the February budget is drafted in such a way that it actually includes education within that now. So our tax colleagues, and we're very fortunate at Sanlam S4 to have a corporate arm who have specialists in tax and regulatory affairs, and they have been kind enough to ensure that we are up to speed with this, and we've been able to share that with our clients and further afield. And essentially what it means is that if you're recruiting students in India for an online program and they're paying you fees, you will be expected to pay a tax of 2% on those fees. That's where it stood in April when it was first sort of highlighted. And at the moment, what they were saying is that you will, as an institution, have to pay that, and it would be payable in July. But there were no regulations that showed how you would pay it, how you would register to pay it, or anything at all. It was very much just put out there that way. That's still where we are. There is no clarity about that. There is just the fact that the tax will be applicable, and this is the amount that you will be charged on your fee. Now, there is lots of debate, and there are different media views on this, that the government has actually taken this back in to have another look at, because with the pandemic and with the need for online education and with the need to get the economy kick-started, adding in another tax may not be the best thing to do at this point of time. But at the moment, there's no decision on that. The government is still considering it. So we are watching that space very, very carefully. We will be putting out information as soon as we get it as to what the next phase of this is. But it's really part of a much wider tax regime in India. India has been through a lot of tax reform in the past few years, and this is one aspect of it. It's just unfortunate that it's going to have an impact for universities at this precise moment. Possibly, you know, we're all going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that maybe it will be put off, and that this interim period we'll be able to move ahead without worrying about an extra tax. But that's what the equalization levy is, and so watch this space. Keep an eye on our website. We will be putting more information out there about it as soon as we get it.
Thanks for that. And if anybody is looking for more information, we do have a white paper on the equalization levy, as well as I just wanted to refer back to the sentiment analysis that Lakshmi and Delia talked about, and we'd be happy to send either of those documents through. So please do let us know if you're not getting those and be interested in getting those. We can send those out. I think just to wrap up today, thank you very much to everybody for your time, but I thought it would be a nice final discussion point to just share, Lakshmi, what you're hearing from the team. I mean, India has not traditionally been work from home, and our team certainly has shifted pretty quickly. What kinds of what is the silver lining? What kinds of interesting things are happening among our colleagues and others that you're hearing on your end?
So I want to say that we are getting used to it, but not wanting to get used to it because we all miss office. We all want to go back to the office at some stage because we miss seeing each other. We are all zoomed out. We are constantly kind of engaging from the minute we sit at our desk till we disconnect at the end of the day. But one thing that I think people have kind of understood and are now starting to think about is about additional channels that they can tap into above and beyond what they would have done when they could just pack their bags and jump into a plane and go somewhere and meet somebody. Two, how to kind of really look at engaging in a meaningful fashion online, learning that it is a skill. It is not kind of, something that comes naturally to any one of us to just look at a screen and start kind of really having a conversation. And three, I think most of us in the team are really kind of looking out for each other and making sure that we are grateful for everything that we've got going at this point in time, because all of us at this point in time in India, for example, are healthy. We had just one case, and then that too kind of recovered in a matter of 10 days and back at the workstation, and are kind of looking at every way possible to protect the pipeline of all of our clients. We are reconciled probably to the fact that we might not be able to have a face-to-face intake towards the end of the year. It could start off as a blended learning format, but everybody is remaining hopeful that by end of 2020, early 2021, we will start seeing movement of students. Whether it is us as a team, whether it is all of the stakeholders that we are engaging with, everyone remains hopeful about that.
Great. Anything to add, Delia, before we wrap up?
Oh, just to say that I think one of the things that's come out of this is people really thinking about kindness, as Lakshmi said, about being caring of each other. And hopefully we'll take that forward and it won't be something we forget when we get back into the swing of everything. So I think it's been a time that people have maybe reflected on things. So it's been challenging. We are definitely looking forward to getting back together. But if we hang on to that, then something good will have come out of it.
Yeah, right. So we'll leave everyone with that message. Thank you all so much for joining us today. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be sending around the recording as well as the slides. And please do look out for our next webinar. This is the first in a 4-part series. So we look forward to having you join us on the next one. Take care, stay safe. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.